Hey there, all you creepers and reapers. Welcome to another episode of the Femme Fatalities. I'm your co-hostess, Anna, and I am here with none other than...
Hey, Grieflings and Frightlings, it's Margaret, and oh, do we have an interesting cast for you all today. Oh, this movie, Anna and I just agreed. We like the critters, we like the animals. It's got a lot to say. Anna, what movie are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about Annihilation. So this is kind of a sci-fi fantasy horror moment starring Natalie Portman and a few others that you probably recognize. Trigger warning, there are a lot of grief themes, marital despondency, adultery, a little bit of gore, but not, I'd say like 5 bats on the cauldron scale. Animal violence, guns. What else, Margaret?
There's some other violence, especially when they come across the group of men, it's Natalie Portman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Her husband's group that went in before. What happens when
Oh yeah,
they
the
start to
body
like
horror.
hallucinate?
I forgot
Yeah,
about
so
that.
there's body horror and there is mental health. They also bring up mental health, addiction. I think we've covered it.
Yeah. So pretty much everything that's a trigger is in this. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have issues with anything on a primary triggers list, might want to skip it or at least listen to the podcast before you watch it. The film
Yes.
is like super grief heavy for a variety of different reasons. So that's something to keep in mind as well. There are animals that are just a little bit different than what you normally see on a walk through the woods. So without further ado, what are your thoughts on this movie, Margaret?
I liked it better. I liked it the first time. I liked it better the second time through. I'm with you. The animals was really cool. What the shimmer does to the landscape was really cool. The animals were freaking so scary. Like the alligator and then the bear, and then how like it would mimic her after it killed her, like her screams and death. Like that was very unnerving. What did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was very different. Like to me, my expectation was a little bit different because I watched the trailer first, but I enjoyed it. The pace was kind of slow. And normally I do like a faster pace with like lots and lots of things going on. But all in all, I think it was a really good film for what it was. I thought that just kind of the idea of assembling these like different military crews to go and investigate these things and stuff like that, it almost reminded me of like unsolved mysteries or something like that. So it definitely had that kind of vibe for me.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Would you go into the shimmer? Like if you were like invited in as an expert, would you join one of the patrol groups knowing that each patrol group either died before you or one person from the previous two? So if you were going to go in after the last group, would you go in after like Natalie Portman's
That's a good question.
group?
It depends on at the time what I had to lose versus what I had to gain. What
Mm-hmm.
about you?
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, would it be worth it? Like, do I have more to gain or do I have more to lose? Because nobody knows what it is. And in the end, what do you think happened to the shimmer?
I think it's still there. Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's still there. Part of me actually thinks at the end they're still in the shimmer. I feel like it's just encased everything. Like they didn't infiltrate it, it has infiltrated them and it's just spreading.
Ooh.
Like that was my whole thought. And I think part of it too was because the way it impacted, what was he called? Kane, Natalie Portman's
Mm-hmm.
husband's character, because he wasn't himself anymore. He was different. But for me, that spoke a lot to the realities of people who are deployed when they come back. Because I think from my perspective, having family members in the military, having worked a little bit with persons in the military through our thanatology program, this expectation is like set that you get deployed, you're doing all of these things that most people can't even imagine doing once, yet you're doing it every day for 6 months, 8 months, a year and a half, whatever the time limit is. And you come back and you're expected just to assimilate right back into society and everyday life and into your roles and norms and all of these things. Chances are you may have PTSD, right? So you need to find supports and services to help you with that. The other difficult part is a lot of the people around you have no idea or no understanding of what you're going through. How could they? They're civilians. So for me, that really struck a chord. Just the grief of coming home and people not understanding what you've been through, not understanding or being willing or open to the idea that you are a different person. This is another version of you. Like, one of my colleagues at my full-time gig said it best. And I got to give her credit. Emily, you did a great job summing this up. But the character Kane, each time he comes home, he's a different Kane. He's not the same as when he came back. And I think looking at it from that perspective, it sheds a lot of light on what people go through when they're deployed and what happens when they come back.
Yes, I love how you touch on the trauma, because this movie has layers of trauma in it that it slowly reveals. We have Kane's trauma. Then we have people in Natalie Portman's group who also have trauma. Like, I think it's Josie, the one that cuts. And then we have like the really like, I don't remember her name, like, but she's like really tough.
Michelle
And we learned that she had it.
played her.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I love her.
Yes. Like, we know that like she had some kind of trauma. She had an addiction. And all these people, right, that we are learning that even
the doctor,
the main lady, the doctor,
what was she called? Dr. Ventress. Jason Lee. Yeah, she's got cancer.
Yes.
So she's like, you know, talking about what do you have to gain? What do you have to lose? You have this potential to gain like all of this knowledge that most of the world will never access. What you have to lose your life while you're dying anyway. So, you know, one heavily outweighs the other from that perspective.
I was kind of wondering, like, as you brought up, like, Kane's trauma, if the Shimmer was actually a representation for part of this film about trauma. Because I really felt like this movie carried this theme of, what do you do with life's pain?
Yeah.
Do you allow it to destroy you, or do you allow yourself to change to become something different? Like, in the end, we see both their eyes have the shimmer.
Right.
And even like when she's sitting there and we see Michelle Rodriguez's tattoo on her arm, we see like how the shimmer has started to change her.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's beautiful, because so often in trauma, there are these ways, like you were saying, that we're changed, but people don't see it because it's becoming integrated into who we are. And so I felt the film really touched on that bigger concept of, what do you do with your pains? What do you do with your grief, your trauma? Are you going to be destroyed by it? Are you going to destroy it? Are you going to change?
Absolutely.
Are you going to run from it?
Yeah. Or, you know, distract yourself. I mean, we see Natalie Portman's character, she has an affair with like her hot colleague, and you know, she's obviously distracting herself. He must be distracting himself from something too. What kind of got me was when he said something along the lines of like, I love my wife. And I'm like, really? Like, yeah.
Even though you're having an affair, you're not in an open relationship, you're not in a poly relationship. So something is not working in the relationship that you're having an affair. And even when she tells you she wants to break up,
and you're like,
you don't want to break up.
I love my wife.
No, I love my wife.
I don't want to get rid of my mistress. Ooh. No. But, you know, obviously I feel like Natalie Portman's character, she's distracting herself. Like, we know this. So who knows what he's doing, but I guess the plot needed it. So yeah.
For some reason. I'm curious. So we see how was it 5 women?
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
Michelle Rodriguez, Natalie Portman, the first lady that dies, Dr. Porges, and
And
Josie, the one with the
yeah.
glasses. Whose fate would you choose? Like, each of them, like, which one of their deaths would you choose? Would you be like the doctor and go into the Shimmer? Would you be Natalie Portman didn't die. Maybe she did. We're not
Yeah.
sure. Like, 'cause she's the Shimmer.
Um,
Michelle Rodriguez, she gets killed by both two ladies get killed by the bear, right?
yeah.
And then I think it's Josie with the glasses that
Mhm.
decides to join the Shimmer.
Yeah. Um, I guess it kind of comes down to that recent question. If you're in the woods, you want to be there with a bear. Um, I feel like the bear almost is like it represents not working through your grief, not working through loss, not working through trauma, and eventually it gets you in the end. And then it
Mm-hmm.
kind of is this angry, violent, attacking thing that's still part of the world through the Shimmer, and it mimics you and imitates you, but it's not the authentic you. So I would opt out for the bear because that essentially means that like I wouldn't be doing any of the work. Um, I think I would probably just go and be part of the Shimmer, and hopefully get turned into flowers because, my decaying being, at least it's doing something wonderful for nature, and maybe that represents that you have achieved being self-aware and you've achieved your actualization for that particular mission of this life. And I think that's kind of beautiful in and of itself. What about you?
I agree. I liked Josie's. I think that was her, the one with the
Mhm.
glasses, that she was like, no, like, she's done fighting. She's
Yeah.
just ready to have peace. And so
Mhm.
she's going to go and become part of the plant life. And that,
Yeah.
like, she had this beautiful surrender. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, like, if I'm going to die, let me die on my terms and not being
Yeah.
eaten by a bear with a skeleton face. And
Absolutely. Well, and sometimes it's okay to surrender, right? So I think a lot of the time we associate the fight, right? We're fighting through this. We're fighting through our pain and our grief and our trauma, and we're fighting for a chance, or we're fighting to stay on top once we get there, whatever it is. Life can be so beautiful and enjoyable if you surrender in the mindset of, I'm here now, I'm doing
mm-hmm,
this, and things are where they need to be, right? So you're not fighting, right? You're just trying to find peace and some sort of oneness with life at hand at that moment. And society teaches us consistently to have that fight, to continue going, to do what you need to do to come up to whatever mirror of success you're looking at. But sometimes it's much better to just focus on the moment at hand.
I feel like you touch on that, like, when do we fight and when is it okay
Mhm.
to surrender, to say that the fight is over? We see in like Michelle Rodriguez's
Mhm.
character that she just fight, and she can't even stop to even
Yeah.
get information to hear, like, you don't need to be fighting about this right now. You don't understand. Like, she's hot-headed, she's quick to react,
Mhm.
and missing that when do I need to fight and when is it okay to say, you know what,
Exactly.
I don't need to fight
Mhm.
this right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think sometimes fighting and strength almost become synonymous, but
Mhm.
you can be silent. You can find a comfortable way to coast along. You can do your grief trauma change work in a way that is working for you, but is very individualized and with oneself, and be incredibly strong. What strong looks like is different for everyone, just as what grief looks like is different for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Well said. That was really well said. Let's see, what other questions do I have for you? I already asked you about the Shimmer and what fate would you pick. Would you destroy or would you fight the Shimmer? Because it feels like everybody that enters the Shimmer goes in,
Mm-hmm.
and it also feels like the Shimmer also starts to mess with
Yeah.
people too, where they start to question their sense of reality.
Mm-hmm. So I almost feel like, I don't know that I would fight the Shimmer, because the questioning, the sense of reality, I really wouldn't be aware of whether or not that was happening. Um, I think option C, um, maybe just kind of hang out and see what happens. The movie shows us what we believe to be bad about the Shimmer, but there are certain things that are also very beautiful about it if you really pay attention to some of the scenes. And I feel like one of the great scenes, which we talked about for a minute during the trigger warning, was the body horror scene, because it's so representative of, if you're against something but it's happening anyway, which is great for grief, it's inside of you. It's not going to go anywhere. If anything, it's just going to grow and grow and grow until you or someone else recognizes it. So you might as well deal with it and work through
Mm-hmm.
it, versus trying to pretend it's not there or trying to combat against it. So I feel like the Shimmer is kind of like that. If you're trying to destroy it, how much of yourself and your own well-being is going to be collateral damage when you do that?
Ooh, yes. And it feels like the Shimmer's going to do that anyways,
Mm-hmm.
because we look at when Cain fights the Shimmer and then he walks out because it's like the Shimmer absorbed Cain
Mm-hmm.
and Cain became the Shimmer. And same with Natalie Portman, it's almost this sense that you can't annihilate the
Yeah.
Shimmer, because if you destroy yourself, the Shimmer has enough of your DNA
Mm-hmm.
to then be you. Or with Natalie Portman, we see where my take is that like she absorbed it, like
Mm-hmm.
Cain killed himself. So yeah, another trigger warning, suicide. And then the Shimmer is him.
Yeah.
And then she is the Shimmer, which was really interesting. That
Mm-hmm.
I think it touches back on that trauma. Even if you try to destroy your trauma, it's gonna be there.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you doing with it?
Yeah. Well, and really too, if you look at it in the sense of like the Shimmer being marriage counseling, right? Because we know like there are all these things going on in their relationship. Did we find that out earlier in the film, right? So individually, they're addressing the Shimmer, they're seeking out the Shimmer. The Shimmer becomes part of them. Okay, well, maybe that's the part of them that has dealt with the state of their relationship, and what comes out, essentially they are two new people, right? Because that's everyone's hope
Mm-hmm.
when you go to
Yes.
therapy or couples therapy or even therapy with like your colleagues or your friends. That's the hope, is really to come out
Mm-hmm.
newer, better, healthier, and that to translate into those relationships too.
Yes, I agree. And I even like wrote down after I watched it, like my thoughts were, what do we do with our pain?
Mm-hmm.
Does it destroy us, each other? How do we see the world despite our pain? Bleak, scary, ugly, dangerous? Do we see the beauty? And then I put change is inevitable. How do we survive? Adapt? Does change consume us, or do we feel the pain, face it, challenge it, lean in, and shimmer? Like
Yeah.
that at the end of the movie, I feel like that was, I hope, the takeaway, the intention of, I believe it was Alex Garland who wrote and directed
Yeah.
the film, to be like, what do you do? Do you shimmer or do you self-destruct? Like the
Mm-hmm.
doctor, like she
Just was, that was
self,
it.
well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
and a while ago, it was going around on social media where instead of like a trigger warning, it's a glimmer warning, like a glimmer of hope warning. So maybe,
Ooh.
there should be shimmer warnings too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really good way to look at it. I think that life, if it were only relegated to joy, would not be worth living, because pain is necessary. You can't have one without the other. If you have no pain, you have no way to you're not able to recognize joy. And it's really how, like you said, how you process the pain and how you work through it to get the joy.
Yes. Yeah. So other thoughts about the movie?
Well, just to kind of go back a little bit, just to comment, anyone, if you're listening and you or a friend, a family member, a colleague, someone in your life is suffering with PTSD, particularly if they are a veteran military member, there are many supports and services available. I know for me, the town that I live in, our local Goodwill actually has a platoon services division, which is absolutely phenomenal. There are a lot of military programs and veterans programs that are also out there, along with local mental health supports and services. The first step is to, find something that works for you. You are worth it. You do deserve it. There's nothing wrong with you. This is something that people do go through, and it is okay to be experiencing it. What we hope is that you are able to find a support that works for you, so that you are able to contribute to your own mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual health.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And listeners, I will put on our Instagram. I have it on my counseling Instagram, but I will share it on the Femme Fatalities. There is a list of warm lines that you can call if you are experiencing mental health struggles that do not call the police, so that there's that option as well, if that is a concern for you and you're struggling and you don't want them to call. So I can put that on our Instagram. So it's the Femme Fatality, so that you also have that information. And oftentimes warm lines. So a warm line just means that there's somebody there that you get to talk to and you don't get a machine. They often have resources, so they can tell you, oh, in your area, or go check here, go there, to help you get connected in your area with the resources that are available in your area.
Absolutely. And Margaret, of course, I have to ask, which character in Annihilation do you relate to the most, and why?
Yes. So if Josie is the one with the glasses, because I get her confused with the other lady who was also grieving, I feel like I would be her. I would be curious. I would be looking for answers, but I'm also reserved unless I really know people.
Mm-hmm.
So she was reserved. And she also was the one that was like, you know what? If death is inevitable,
Mm-hmm.
I want to have choice in here. I don't want my demons to consume me. I want to be able to choose fate. How about you?
Well, I have to say I kind of relate to the animals, particularly the bear. And the reason for that is I I have this trouble. Sometimes I'll placate myself, sometimes I won't, but when I'm talking to others and I'm trying to get them to understand, like, hey, and this is my personal relationships. Obviously, if it's a professional situation where I'm addressing someone, it's quite different. But I will tell people, this is how you sound, right? So it's kind of like a dramatized version of what they sound like, right? And the bear does that, but it's really to get their attention. So the bear, yeah. And I think that's really why.
Oh, I love that answer.
Well, and it's because too, I feel like sometimes, depending on your relationships with people, once again, this is my personal life, not my professional life, you do have to be kind of like standing tall, towering over someone in their face to be like, hey, we really need to talk about this. And it's not in like a mean, aggressive, assertive way. It's just more of like that, like, I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. This is what it is. Let's figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, I love that. And the bear was one of the more assertive
Yeah.
characters because you just knew, like,
Mm-hmm.
you knew its agenda. You didn't have to guess. Like when the five of them go
Mm-hmm.
in, Natalie Portman isn't telling them that Kane was in the previous
Yeah.
group and was her husband. The doctor doesn't say that she has cancer.
Mm-hmm.
We can guess from how Michelle Rodriguez acts that she's got some trauma,
Mm-hmm.
she's had some addiction. The blonde lady, we don't know that she's grieving and she's going in there.
Yeah.
And Josie, we don't know that she's also had trauma and that
Mm-hmm.
has manifested in self-harm. And as it slowly comes out, which often happens in life, we keep that really close until we're in a stressful situation or we have to disclose to others.
Absolutely. And meanwhile, the bear's like, yo, like, this is what it is. You know what I mean? It's just
Mm-hmm.
like, I've been here. This is not my first, glimmer, shimmer rodeo. I'm here. And that's what it is. But yeah, you're very right too. I think oftentimes we keep certain things very close to us. And um, when there's stress or even sometimes, which in this movie isn't very demonstrative, but in reality, when you feel like you can trust someone, like truly trust someone, you provide bits and pieces of information about that,
Mm-hmm.
which is a great thing to do.
Yes. Well, that's often how trust works, right? In
Mm-hmm.
order to build that intimacy, that vulnerability, trust is I share a little, you share a
Mm-hmm.
little. And it's like this little dance we do so that we can get there. Because often we want to know if I give you this little piece, how are you going to
Mm-hmm.
treat it? And then it's like, okay, I'll reciprocate that. And then we either give more or less depending on what we give and how the other person responds. And I think in that we often forget to check with the person.
Mm-hmm.
Are you in a place I want to discuss my trauma? I want to discuss my grief and checking with them. So viewers, listeners, like it's check with people because they might not have the capacity. They might not
Mm-hmm.
have what you're looking for. You might want to be sharing a grief journey or a trauma story and they don't have it. So to check. And if they say no, they're not rejecting you.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying, I don't have what you need right now and I can't give it to you. So then you are saving your feelings, you're
Mm-hmm.
saving the other person's feelings to be able to go and get those needs met. Because so often we're like, you rejected me. Like I go to talk to Anna and I don't say, hey, can I share some deep stuff? And then she's already burnt out. And then she's like, okay, cool, Margaret. And then I'm hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm pulling away. And now our friendship is struggling, then if I say, hey, I really need to talk. And she's like, I'm done. I don't have anything for you. I've had a rough week at work.
Yeah,
And then I can get my needs met elsewhere.
absolutely. And even when you are talking to someone, like let's say you're in a position where, things are going steady and well, and this person wants to open up and you're totally comfortable and ready for that, but then they're sharing these things and you happen to think of, oh my goodness, I had something sort of similar happen. Sometimes it's super helpful, like to say, oh Margaret, this is a very lame example, but oh Margaret, you put fresh apples in your apple walnut cake. Well, I have a story that might be helpful, right? So in my head, I'm thinking, oh, well, I grate my apples and she cuts hers into chunks. But I want to ask her first if it's okay for me to share versus just being like, oh, well, I do it this way. This is the right way. You know what I mean? So that can be very
Yeah.
helpful too.
And even like, so in like Anna's example, I can also check. If I'm like in a whatever space, I'm like, oh, you don't like it chunky? Oh, like, is that a problem for you? And then
Mm-hmm.
Anna can then be like, no, like this is how I do it.
Yeah.
I grate them and it's easier for me. I just wanted to share that because I thought it would be helpful. And then her and I can have a conversation. Oh, I really just love the chunks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love it when it's shredded. Okay, so then we then know more about each other where it feels collaborative
Mm-hmm.
and not, oh, Anna just judged me because she said that she grates her apples and she doesn't like mine chunky, which she didn't say, but often our brain
Mm-hmm.
will do that. So I'm say, I do it this way. And our brain says, oh, you don't like that I did it this way.
Absolutely. Yeah. For the record, though, I do prefer chunky apples in my apple cake, if anybody's out there wondering. But
Because it's just so good. There's something
Yeah, it
about
gives
that.
you a nice bite. Like, just,
Yes.
I know what I'll be baking this evening now. Um, so, any other thoughts on Annihilation?
No, you?
No, I think it's for me. It was a good one time watch. I think it's definitely worth watching. Just if you're listening and you haven't seen it yet, go in comfortable and knowing that it is a little bit of a slower pace. Margaret and I were talking about this earlier. I tend to like the body horror slash slash slash, very kind of quick things happening, but it is a really nice change of pace watching the movie. And
Mm-hmm.
to me it was like taking a college course. You're going to get out of it what you invest into it. So if you go in with
Mm-hmm.
that mindset, I think it's a really enjoyable watch. How about you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's an enjoyable watch. I feel like it's one of those movies, probably if I watched a third time, I would probably get more out of it. Because even though it is slower paced, it feels like it is layered with some richness that you don't always catch on the first watch. Where, like, a slasher film, you get what you see. It's like The Bear, you're
Exactly.
getting
It's
what you
that
see. Then
instant
other
gratification.
movies where you're trying to get into the mind of the writer, the director,
Mhm.
the story, all of that, to where sometimes you're like, I'm not quite sure what you meant
Mhm.
by this.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's a great
Yes.
it's a great onion film is what I would call it because there are
Yes.
so many layers.
Mhm. Yes, I agree.
For sure. Well, speaking of onions, I do have to go check on my garlic plant in the garden because it's going to get dark soon and have to protect my household. Until next time, make sure you eat those coffin cookies and drink your bruja brew, and we'll see you soon.
Yes, like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. Thanks for watching and listening. We'll see you soon.